So starting with late diastole, and here diastole means ventricular diastole, late ventricular diastole. In this, ventricle is just relaxing. Okay, ventricle is just relaxed. So once ventricle is relaxed, the blood will come from atrium to ventricle. So mitral and tricuspid valve, which is connecting atria and ventricle, must be open so that blood can come from atrium to ventricle. Okay, so I have written here mitral and tricuspid valves between atria and ventricle are open, but ventricle is just relaxing at the time of diastole, so there will be no blood outflow from the ventricle to the aorta. So aortic and pulmonary means left ventricle is connected to aorta and right ventricle is connected to pulmonary artery. So in late diastole of the ventricle, it means when ventricle is relaxed, there will be no blood flow from the ventricle to the aorta and pulmonary artery. So aortic valve and pulmonary valve are closed at the time of late diastole. Okay, so my mitral and tricuspid valves between atria and ventricle are open, and aortic and pulmonary valves are just closed. Clear? Now 70% of ventricular filling occurs in this late diastole, and blood flows into heart through out diastole. And so many important points are there here. 70% of ventricular filling occurs in this late diastole period, and mitral and tricuspid valve between atria and ventricle are open so that blood can come from atrium to ventricle, and pulmonary valves are closed so that blood will not outflow from ventricle to aorta and pulmonary artery. And one more thing, in atrium, blood is coming from vein, superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, and that blood is actually going into ventricle, from atrium to ventricle. So it is also known as joint diastole, because at that time atria is also in diastole period, and ventricle is also in diastolic period. Means ventricle is also relaxed, atrium is also relaxed. The blood which is coming from inferior vena cava, superior vena cava is directly going through atrium to ventricle. No need of ventricular contraction. The speed at which blood is coming from inferior vena cava and superior vena cava to the atrium, at that particular speed the blood is going to your ventricle. Okay, so no need of contraction at this time. But when okay, so I have written here blood flows into heart throughout the diastole, filling atria and ventricle both. Now after 70% filling of the ventricle, now atria will start systole. Okay, and the blood which is remaining in atria, which has not been flown to ventricle, will pumped out from the atrium to the ventricle when atrial starts contracting. That is known as atrial systole. So contraction of atria propels some additional amount of blood into ventricle, those amount of blood which was remain in atria. Okay, because this is the type of a structure. Actually this is the type of a structure. Okay, suppose this is ventricle, this is atria, so it is the atrioventricular valve, it is mitral valve or tricuspid valve. So some blood is deposited here at this corner. Okay, maximum blood which is coming from inferior vena cava directly going into this, but the blood which is deposited here will go when this atria will undergo contraction, means when atria will do systole. Clear? So contraction of the atria propels some additional blood into the ventricle. Getting? Move to this side. Contraction of atrial muscles, and one more important point thing, mind it is important for AIMS, that is the contraction of the atrial muscle will narrows the orifices of the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, because this is your atrium. Okay, suppose this is atrium and this is the superior vena cava, this is the inferior vena cava, suppose. So when this will contract, then it will also lead to the, here is opening, so it will also lead to the contraction of this opening, means narrowing of the opening of the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. So contraction of the atrial muscle will narrow the orifice of superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, and once the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava orifice get narrowed, then the blood flow will decrease, but inertia of the momentum, inertia of the motion of the blood will keep this blood flowing into the atria, because you know inertia. Okay, in physics you have read. So inertia of the blood will keep blood flowing into the aorta, although the orifice of the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava get narrowed because of the contraction of the atrial muscle. Atrial muscle will contract, which will lead to the contraction of the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava orifices. Getting? So I have written here, contraction of atrial muscle narrows orifices of superior vena cava and inferior cava, but inertia of blood flowing towards the heart keep the blood flowing in atria. Although the atria is contracted and the orifices of the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava get narrowed, but the inertia of blood moving towards the heart keep blood flowing into the atria. Clear? Now moving to the next slide. But one more important point in this atrial systole is that despite these inhibitory effects, influences, there is some regurgitation of blood in veins. Regurgitation means backflow, means some blood will backflow from atria to superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, because atria is just contracting. See the diagram, atria is contracting, so it will propel some blood towards ventricle and also some blood towards upper side means through the orifices of the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. Although the orifices of the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava are narrowed, second point, the momentum of the blood keeps the blood flowing in direction of atria, but still of these two factors I have mentioned here, inhibitory influences. Inhibitory influences means despite these two inhibitory influences, which two, that is the momentum of the blood keeps the blood flowing towards the atria, and the narrowing of the orifices, these two are the inhibitory influence for the regurgitation of blood. Regurgitation means backflow of the blood from atrium to superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, but there is some regurgitation of blood occurs in veins despite of these two inhibitory influences. Clear? So now moving to the ventricular systole. Ventricular systole, before starting discussing ventricular systole, first you will discuss about some pressure in aorta and pulmonary artery. Pressure in aorta is 80 mmHg normally, and pulmonary artery 10 mmHg, diastolic pressure. Okay, so once ventricle is filled during atrial systole, fully filled, then ventricle start contracting, and once ventricle start contracting, its volume is decreasing and its pressure is increasing. Volume is decreasing, ventricle start contracting, so its pressure will increase. Okay, once the pressure inside the right and left ventricle increases, and once it increases in left ventricle, because left ventricle is connected with aorta and right ventricle is connected with your pulmonary artery. Okay, it's large, sorry. Okay, so understand, your left ventricle is connected with your aorta and your right ventricle is connected with your pulmonary artery. So we all know that something flows from high pressure to low pressure. Okay, anything flows from high pressure to low pressure. So when the left ventricle will attain pressure more than 80 mmHg, then the blood starts flowing from the left ventricle to aorta, and once the right ventricle will acquire pressure more than 10 mmHg, then blood flow starts from the right ventricle to the pulmonary artery. Okay, and ventricle start contracting after filling, and contract, and this will increase pressure, and once it will reach to 10 mmHg and 8 mmHg, then pulmonary valve and the aortic valve opens, and the blood flows from left ventricle to aorta and right ventricle to the pulmonary artery. And the time period of the contraction which it has taken to reach the 80 mmHg and 10 mmHg, it is known as isovolumetric contraction, because there is no any volume pumped out from ventricle, but ventricle is contracting, just ventricle is contracting for increasing its pressure more than 80 mmHg and 10 mmHg respectively in left and right ventricle to cross the pressure in aorta and pulmonary artery. Getting? This is the most important, because all of you are confused in isovolumetric contraction. What is isovolumetric contraction? Isovolumetric because volume of blood inside the ventricle is not changing. Okay, many of you are confused that volume of the ventricle will not change. No, volume of ventricle is changing, because ventricle is contracting. So volume of whole ventricle is reducing, but blood which is present in the ventricle is not changing. The volume of the blood present in ventricle is not changing, because it will change only when ventricle pumps the blood out from the ventricle to the aorta and pulmonary artery, and it will occur only when pressure reaches 80 mmHg and 10 mmHg. Clear? So this period of volumetric contraction is known as isovolumetric contraction. Okay, volume of blood is not changing during this contraction, and during this contraction the pressure rises to 80 mmHg and 10 mmHg, and once the pressure rises, the ventricle will outflow from ventricle, blood will go to the aorta and pulmonary artery. Okay, because of the opening of the pulmonary valve and aortic valve. So this is most important point. Now discussing some more important point. When the aortic and pulmonary valve opens, the phase of ventricular ejection starts, means ventricle start to eject blood into the aorta and pulmonary artery. So ventricular pressure increases, and it will increase up to 120, because ventricle is contracting. Once pressure reaches to 80 mmHg and 10 mmHg, it will start pumping blood into aorta, but still it is contracting, so pressure will still increase and reaches to maximally 120 and 25 mmHg. 120 in left ventricle and 25 mmHg in your right ventricle. Okay, and now late in systole of the ventricle, pressure in aorta actually precedes that in left ventricle. Okay, now aorta get accumulated with blood, so pressure in aorta also rises, and pressure in aorta rises more than 120. Okay, once it rises more than 120, then the blood ejection from the ventricle to the aorta will get stopped. Okay, because pressure is increased in aorta and pressure is less in ventricle, because pressure in aorta is increased more than 120 due to accumulation of blood in aorta. But still, after increasing pressure in aorta, still some blood will flow from left ventricle to aorta because of the momentum of the blood, inertia of the blood. Okay, mind it, this is the conceptual part which is maybe asked in EMS. Pressure is greater in aorta, but still blood is flowing from ventricle to aorta, means from low pressure to high pressure. Why this flow is occurring? Because of the momentum of the blood, because of the inertia of the blood. Clear? So I have written here, keep momentum of blood, keep blood flowing into it. Okay, this is all about ventricle systole. Now coming to one more important point. End diastolic volume is 130 ml, means when ventricle is fully filled with blood, there is no ejection of blood from ventricle. That before start of the isovolumetric contraction, the volume present in the ventricle is 130 ml. End systolic volume is when aortic and pulmonary valve get closed and the blood flow from ventricle to aorta and pulmonary artery get stopped. At that time, if you measure the volume of blood present in ventricle, that it will be 50 ml. So what amount of blood get ejected? That is known as stroke volume, and that is 130 minus 50. It is probably 70 to 90 ml. Range is 70 to 90 ml is your net ejection volume or stroke volume. Sometimes EMS also asks about ejection fraction. What is ejection fraction? Ejection fraction is just ejected amount by total amount. Total amount means end diastolic volume. End diastolic diastolic volume means at the end of diastole the amount of blood present in ventricle. At the end of diastole the amount of blood present in ventricle is known as end diastolic volume. So ejection fraction is calculated by ejection amount upon end diastolic volume, because from end diastolic volume stroke volume is the amount which is subtracted from end diastolic volume minus end systolic volume. You are getting? Now coming to the early diastole of the ventricle. Systole is over, then ventricle will go diastole in diastolic condition. It is known as early diastole because we have started from late diastole. Once the ventricular muscle is fully contracted, the already I have said that ventricle start contracting, it will cross first 80 mmHg, then it will cross your 120. Once it reaches 120, ventricle still get contracted, but this time more contraction will decrease its pressure because of the acting myosin overlapping. Okay, so simply here once the ventricle reaches 120, more than 120 mmHg pressure, its pressure will start to fall down. Okay, and the already falling pressure drops more rapidly, and this is known as protodiastole. Means falling pressure in ventricle is known as protodiastole. Okay, and it ends when the momentum of ejected blood overcome the aortic and pulmonary valves close. I have said that pressure in aorta has raised up, but still blood is flowing from ventricle to aorta due to momentum. Once this momentum is over, okay, inertia is overcome, then there will be no blood flow from the aorta to the pulmonary artery to the ventricle to the aorta and pulmonary artery. Okay, blood flow will be completely stopped, and ultimately aortic and pulmonary valve will get closed. Okay, after this ventricular go under relaxation. Okay, now ventricle go relaxation. It means relaxation means it will decrease its pressure, and once its pressure is less than atrial pressure, then atrioventricular valve will open. That is bicuspid and tricuspid valve will open, and again blood flow starts from atria to ventricle. Okay, because all these are pressure gradient based. Once the pressure in ventricle due to relaxation get decreased in comparison with atria, then the atrioventricular valve will open and blood flow starts from the high pressure area, that is atrial area, to the ventricle. All are pressure gradient related. Okay, so this is all about your cardiac cycle. Okay, I hope you